Welcome. This is Raoul Lowery-Contreras, and I'm so happy that you're here today. We've experienced a rough few days, and I want to bring you up to date on what's going on in Washington. But first, at 9:48 in the morning of January 28th, 1982, 9 years before September 11th, 2001, terrorism in the form of political murder changed Los Angeles and me. What? Yes, foreigners brought political murder to America. Two terrorists shot and killed the Turkish consul general in the morning of January 28, 1982, while he was sitting in his car at Comstock and Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, waiting for a traffic light to change. They weren't just foreign terrorists, they were terrorists from America's newest European immigrants, Armenians. They were new in 1982. 1982 was a long time ago, so why bring it up now in 2020? Well, a few days ago, California's new governor, the pride of Santa Clara University, Gavin Newsome, stepped up as a real governor and defied California's very wealthy half-million-person Armenian community by rejecting parole for Hampig Sassounian, otherwise known as Harry. Of the two murderers that day, Sassounian was the only one identified, captured, and convicted. Hampig, you see, was the 19-year-old murderer who stepped up to the consul's car at that Westwood intersection and emptied a pistol into the consul, killing him on that bright, sunny California morning. Witnesses saw him do it. Other witnesses saw him running from the scene. Other witnesses saw him enter a car and speed away. They wrote down his license number. And this is really the dumb criminal part. The car was registered in his name. The jury convicted him of murder and of killing the consul general because the diplomat was Turkish. You see, the law at that time was a little different. If you could prove that someone killed somebody because of their race or nationality, that was an additional condition. For example, no parole. That change, or that decision by the jury, allowed the judge to sentence Hampig to life without possibility of parole. Organized Armenian groups rallied to Sassounian's defense and raised money for his defense. Which group? Remember this name, the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, ARF. As late as this week, his legal fees have been paid and are paid by organized Armenian fundraising efforts of the ARF. His lawyers, at one point, convinced an appeals court that the consul general's being a Turk, or being Turkish, didn't compel Hampig Sassounian to kill the consul general. He killed him because he was an official Turkish diplomat. I don't see much difference there, but it was a big deal. It was a big deal because it took the death penalty off the table and made Hampig eventually eligible for parole. Now, Governor Newsome has joined the exclusive club with former Governor Pat Brown Jr., the exclusive club of not pardoning Hampig Sassounian, Armenian terrorist and murderer. By coincidence, the very day Governor Newsome rejected parole for Sassounian, I came across a newly unearthed excerpt from the United States Congressional Record. If you don't know, that's the official record of the United States House of Representatives. And congressmen insert speeches, articles, whatever. As a matter of fact, some of my work, an essay I wrote about Cinco de Mayo some 20 years ago, caught the eye of a congressman from Texas, and he inserted that article into the congressional record. So it's a very widely used resource for researchers because it's the up-to-date debate and positions that are taken in Congress. Congressman Frank E. Hook, Democrat of Michigan, on May 4th, 1945, inserted an article into the congressional record about get this is still World War II was still going on, about Armenian support in America of Adolf Hitler and of Hitler's Holocaust that killed millions of European Jews. Support by whom? Well, let's look at some of the things Congressman Hook said. Quote, the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, ARF, also known as Dashnaks. That's spelled D-A-S-H-N-A-K-S. Some people spell it D-A-S-H-N-A-G-S. It, the ARF, with a long record of terrorist fascist activities. The September 17th of 1936 issue of their Armenian language newspaper, spelled H-A-I-R-E-N-I-K, pronounced, I'm doing my best here, Huirenik, edited daily by propaganda chief Ruben Darbinian. Here are statements from Armenian Huirenik. Quote, Italy has not only become regenerated by fascism, but has become an empire nation as a military power in international politics. Germany has not only become regenerated by Hitlerism, but has turned her face to the east and displays her fist to Moscow. That was 4 years before Hitler attacked Russia. Hitlerism and fascism, which are the stepsons of Bolshevism and begotten by it, are Germany's gift to mankind, unquote. The congressional record further states, quote, to understand the role of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation, ARF, it is necessary to briefly review Armenian history, for ARF misdeeds in America are rooted in the ideologies it fostered in the stormy, feud-infested underworld of the Near East. Some people call it the Eurasian area. Quote, again, from the congressional record. By a curious twist of diplomacy, the ARF became rulers for about 2 years, 1918 through 1920, of the territory now comprising Soviet Armenia. Being used to revolutionary methods, however, they failed as government administrators. End of quote. For the record, I have seen skulls of little children who were executed by one shot to the back of the head by Armenian Dashnaks who waged war on Azerbaijan in 1918. They were trying to capture Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, because it was a world-renowned oil production center. The Armenians wanted the oil because they had none. The bodies of those children were thrown into deep wells to get rid of the bodies of thousands of Azerbaijanis who were murdered by Armenian troops. This mass murder was documented at the peace conference in Versailles in France and was thoroughly documented, and blame was properly laid on Armenians and Bolshevik allies of theirs. These post-imperial Russian-dominated Armenians, according to Congressman Hook, quote, engaged in a series of expansionist wars which ended disastrously, unquote. Hook, quote, after purloining the national treasury, they stole the money, Dashnak leaders were ousted from power. Many, we know, went to America, to Massachusetts, Michigan, and California. Congressman Hook said that once the Soviets took over, quote, exiled Dashnag leaders have entered into a web of intrigue with any power which promised to place them in the saddle again. In 1933, the new Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler, lavishly promised everything to everybody and looked with particular favor on any disgruntled clique which could pave the way for his policy of reaching the Caucasian oil fields. In mass revivalist meetings marked with wild religious frenzy, they, the Armenians, worshipped their defunct Armenian regime, unquote. Armenia brags that it is one of the first Christian nations. Congressman Hook describes in detail how the Dashnaks rejected Armenia's religiosity with the Archbishop Turian story. Quote, on July 1, 1933, Archbishop Leon Turian, primate of the Armenian Church in North and South America, refused to speak at Armenian Day at the Chicago Fair unless the Dashnak flag was removed. He demanded that only the American flag appear. The audience roared with approval in his favor. From then on, the infuriated ARF press denounced the Archbishop as a traitor and a Soviet agent. Hurenik, the magazine, began to print letters threatening his life. Samples, quote, Archbishop Turian will be punished sooner or later. The day of reckoning will come. He is going to be sorry for it, and very sorry. Until Turian is punished ruthlessly, the bones of our martyrs will not rest in their places. Unquote. Quote, when the bishop asked for police protection, Hurnek denounced him for seeking the protection of alien police. Remember, he was in Chicago. Alien police, as interpreted by these Armenians, is American police. They were in America. In December 1933, quote, while celebrating Christmas Mass in the Holy Cross Church in New York, the Archbishop was murdered by a gang of Dashnak assassins in the favorite Dashnak manner, a butcher knife plunged deep into his groin. 2 ARF officials were convicted of first-degree murder. 7 other Dashnaks were convicted of first-degree manslaughter. The convictions were all appealed, but the convictions stood. While the ARF press spoke of indignant jurymen, false witnesses, and slurred the American judiciary, it referred to its 9 cutthroat assassins as our blameless comrades, unquote. On Adolf Hitler and Nazis, the Armenian Dashnak press said, and I quote, Adolf Hitler, after Herculean struggles, spoke to the racial heartstring of the German, opened the fountain of his national genius, struck down the spirit of defeatism. Now there is a Germany, strong, united, aggressive, proud, and self-reliant, unquote. The Dashnak press wrote that Hitler provided a, quote, well-organized and planned policy. Since Hitler's assumption of power, at no time the German thought has been so explicit, clear, and rich as now. And whatever outsiders may think concerning Hitlerism and fascism as a system of government, it is proved that they have revitalized and regenerated the 2 states, Germany and Italy. Armenians and Jews. Congressman Hook quotes from a series, quote, a series of 3 lengthy front-page articles written by a Dashnak who just returned from Germany, published by Hurenik. They extol the Nazi regime, the myth of Aryan culture, and whitewashing Nazi persecution. Speaking of Jews, the Armenian Dashnaks further wrote, Jews of all people, being the most fanatical nationalists and race worshippers, wherever they go, they are compelled to create an atmosphere and the rights and customs of internationalism and world citizenship in order to preserve their race exaltation pure. As the British used battleships to occupy lands and to protect their fatherland, in this same way the Jew uses internationalism or communism as a weapon, unquote. Congressman Hook continued the quote with this most terrifying paragraph published by Armenian Dashnaks. Quote, Sometimes it is difficult to eradicate these poisonous elements when they have already struck deep roots like a chronic disease, and eradicate them in an uncommon method. These attempts and methods are regarded revolutionary. During a surgical operation, the flow of blood is a natural thing. Under such conditions, dictatorship seems to have the role of a savior. Unquote. So, in fact, Armenian Dashnaks were calling Jews of Europe poisonous elements and the Holocaust a surgical operation to cleanse Europe from these elements. Quote, the flow of blood is a natural thing, unquote. What a way to define the final solution of Adolf Hitler. Congressman Hook. Hurenic Weekly is the English language organ of the Dashnaks. That was edited in Boston at the time by James Mandalian. The weekly voiced political sentiments of the mother publication. The August 9th, 1935 issue started off with a reference to the Jewish-controlled film industry, then ascribed Armenian massacres, that they've been calling the Great Genocide, to the Turkish Jews of Salonika because, that's in Turkey, because of the Jewish love of gain. In other words, their Jewish love of money. The May 10th, 1935 issue quoted the vice mayor of Bucharest, Romania, as saying, quote, the Armenians, meaning Dashnaks, have helped us, Romanians, not to become slaves of the Jewish elements, unquote. More from the weekly, quote, and the type of Jew who is imported to Palestine is not anything to be proud about. Their loose morals and other vices which were unknown to the Arabs prior to the Balfour Declaration, on top of all communistic activities, were the cause of most of the Arab criticism, unquote. That, ladies and gentlemen, is true fantasy. Armenians, race and General Neje. Race is ultimate in Armenia, thought Congressman Hook's congressional record maintained. Just as the myth of an Aryan super race was conceived by the Nazis to rekindle hope among the defeatist and frustrated German masses, Dashnaks added race worship to the cult of flag worship. A few months before the murder of the Archbishop, Hernick, September 27, 1933, published an article on racial religionism, explaining the need for racial convulsions, try mass murder, in order to achieve racial awakening. Unquote. Hook said, quote, the organizer of the racial religious orders was an Armenian military hack named General Georgian Nejdeh, Nejdeh, Nejdeh. Nejdeh, quote, that's what the general said. He was a general. Quote, today Germany and Italy are strong because as a nation they live and breathe in the terms of race. That was published April 10th, 1936. Congressman Hook, quote, adapting the slogan, youth, heart, and iron, Nejdeh generally modeled Dashnak youth upon the Hitler youth pattern. At first called racial patriots, later they became known as Shegargorans, composed of two words, Sheg, T-Z-E-G-H, race, and G-R-O-N, meaning religion. Race worshippers. From this point on, the dope of decadent race worship, dead hero worship, and defunct flag worship was injected into the young Shezgergan minds. Whipped into strict discipline, urged never to marry non-Armenians lest it pollute the purity of the Armenian race, Dashnak leaders pursued the nationalist credo that Armenianism and Armenian race nationalism be retained at all costs, unquote. Equally significant, according to Congressman Hook, is an item in Newsweek of November 12th, 1941, entitled Armenian Puppet State. In it, we find, quote, the Nazis have promised the Dashnags an autonomous state similar to Croatia in return for their cooperation. The May 3rd, 1935 issue carried a letter from a Nazi named Helmut Lang answering the query of a Shesgaran on Germany's attitude towards ARF aims or goals. Quote, National Socialism is the mainstay of the national idea and the determined opponent of thraldom. We Germans cannot but recognize your Armenian claims as thoroughly legitimate. Your aim is and must be Armenian rebirth to Armenian liberty in the Armenian spirit. We Germans want to have our countrymen free from foreign yoke. You, as an Armenian patriot, want to have Armenia free again. That brings us back to today. Governor Newsome rejected Hampig Sassounian's parole because he had evidence that outweighed by negative factors the possibility of parole. That evidence shows, according to Governor Newsome, he, Sassounian, remains unsuitable for parole at this time, unquote. 3 years ago, then Governor Brown also rejected parole for terrorist Sassounian by the California Parole Board, after receiving a letter from then Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and then Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Whatever they said represented the thinking of President Donald J. Trump. For that, we must compliment President Trump, for Sassounian should never see the outside of a prison again. 19-year-old Sassounian and his Armenian supporters tried to kill the rule of law in Los Angeles in 1982. By the way, it was the second assassination of a Turkish consul in Los Angeles. 9 years earlier, in 1973, another Armenian terrorist named Gurgen Yanikian killed another Turkish consul general and his deputy. Governor Dukmajian, who was an Armenian himself, pardoned Yanakian in 1984, but he did so for medical reasons. He died a month or two after. It is widely believed that Yanikian's act was the inspiration for the founding of Armenian terrorists that killed the Turkish consul in 1982. And the group that came out of that, the acronym is ASALA, ASALA, committed terror attacks against Turkish diplomats all over the world, assassinating over 40 of them and their family members up until the 1990s. So for about a 20-year period, these guys went nuts, assassinating Turkish diplomats and their families all over the world. Now, instead of the old Dashnaks and Nazi supporters who worked like termites to kill democracy from within by siding with Adolf Hitler and assassinating prominent churchmen, and some in Europe even volunteering for the World War II German army to fight against Americans in the south of France, they have reorganized in the USA as, new name, the Armenian National Committee of America. ANCA, ANCA. They had some successes in the U.S. in the early 1990s when they convinced a Democratic U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate, to impose sanctions on the country Armenia invaded in 1992, which is Azerbaijan. Then U.S. Senator John Kerry was their point man in the Senate. He later became Secretary of State and also a candidate for president. Armenia, led by Soviet army-trained officers and some Russian army units, not only invaded an area with some Armenians living in it, but it continued the invasion of and occupation of 7 more Azerbaijani districts. Armenia occupied 20% of the internationally recognized nation of Azerbaijan. It still occupies that 20%. It forced 1 million Azerbaijani civilians out of their homes expelled them from their own territory, from their own country. That was the largest expulsion of an ethnic population from their homes since World War II through 1992. The United Nations General Assembly and Security Council have combined, it passed 5 different UN resolutions demanding Armenia vacate the 20% of Azerbaijan it has occupied since 1992. Armenia refuses to acknowledge and implement these resolutions. Under the influence of the Armenian special interests in 1992, the U.S. Congress rewarded the aggressor, Armenia, and punished the victim, Azerbaijan, punished the victim of aggression and occupation, which is, as I said, Azerbaijan. Again, for the record, despite my serving 8 years as a United States Marine between 1959 and 1967, I had never heard a shot fired in anger until I was standing on the line of conflict between invader Armenians and defender Azerbaijanis 3 years ago. I witnessed an artillery barrage by Armenians in southwest Azerbaijan. I also observed artillery shell damage on farmhouses miles within Azerbaijan caused by artillery shells fired from Russian-provided big guns by Armenian soldiers. Organized Armenian groups led by the Armenian National Committee of America, ANCA, were able to persuade the U.S. Congress to cut aid to Azerbaijan in the post-Soviet years and to funnel billions of dollars in aid to Armenia. Despite these billions, Armenia continued to shrink and has become a Russian puppet state. The Russian army has its largest base in Armenia. Armenian borders with the Republic of Georgia, Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Iran are manned by Russian soldiers and border guards. Armenia's army is run by the Russian army, by a Russian general. Armenia grudgingly sent a few dozen soldiers to help the U.S. in Afghanistan and Iraq, but they didn't want to do it, and in fact, they wouldn't put them under the command of Americans. They put them under command of Germans. And last year, at the behest of Russia, Armenia sent a contingent to Syria to help Bashar Assad's murderous regime. Russia paid the bill. The question remains, why would the U.S. help Armenia with American taxpayer money, and where has over $2 billion gone? Armenia is bankrupt as a nation, as a government, and survives on 3 outside sources: money from Russia, money from the U.S. government, and remittances from abroad. We're not talking 2% of the country's GDP in the form of remittances like in Mexico. No, we're talking like 35% of their whole GDP is remittances or are remittances from abroad. The Armenian populations of Russia, France, and the United States outnumber the population of Armenia, a population of 3 million that is shrinking every single year. Armenia, according to the Anti-Defamation League here in America, is also the second most viciously anti-Semitic nation in all of Europe. No wonder that since Armenia became independent, its Jewish population has shrunk from an estimated 10,000 Jews in 1960 to an estimated 300 today. That might be 1,000, but we don't know for sure. Behind all the billions of dollars sent to Armenia by the U.S. since 1992 is ANCA, an American Armenian organization that works on behalf of Armenia, which happens to be a Russian puppet state. They want more money. ANCA wants Congress to vote more money. ANCA is the lobbyist arm of Dashnaks who advocated for Nazis and the Holocaust during my lifetime. In February, ANCA announced it was going to fight the Trump administration's cut of aid to Armenia by demanding Congress vote $100 million worth of aid for the 3 million person Armenia plus $1.5 million to its occupied puppet government of Nagorno-Karabakh, an Armenian-occupied territory of Azerbaijan. It also wants Congress to lift U.S. government restrictions that ban U.S. government officials from traveling to Azerbaijan's occupied Karabakh region without Azerbaijan's official permission. They also demand to cut off all military aid to American ally Azerbaijan. It should be noted that Azerbaijan granted air transit and landing rights to American military traffic to and from Iraq and Afghanistan since September 11, 2001. Azerbaijan has become the most important U.S. ally and partner in the Caspian region. The two countries cooperate in crucial areas from fighting against international terrorism to energy security. And, let us not forget, Americans do a lot of business in Azerbaijan. We have a good trading relationship with them. In Armenia, however, not much has changed. The same generals that collaborated with Nazi Germany are being glorified in Armenia as national heroes. In 2016, the Armenian government unveiled a statue to the Armenian Nazi collaborator, our friend Geragan Nezhde. The president of Armenia and other government officials were all in attendance when the statue was unveiled. Nezhde, who also created the aforementioned race-worshipping religion, has other statues in Armenia, a town square, and a metro station in Yerevan are named. Yerevan is the capital of Armenia. In Yerevan, a square, a metro station, and several statues memorialize General Nezhde. Shockingly, and this is really, really bad news, his legacy, which I read to you earlier about racial worship, is being taught to Armenian kids in their schools today, using American taxpayers' money to do so. From a Russian news agency, we have some information about General Nezhde. In 1942, the general formed units from captured Armenian Red Army soldiers into the German army. There were at least 8 or 9 battalions of Armenian soldiers in the German army. On December 15, 1942, General Nezhde became one of the 7 members of the Armenian National Council established by the Germans. According to historians, Armenian militarized formations, that's battalions, led by Nezhde, created in Germany, took an active part in operations to capture Crimea and attacks on the Caucasus, and Armenian battalions, infantry battalions, fought Americans in the south of France when the Americans invaded there. Drastamat Kanayan, known under the name of General Dro, that's much easier, General Dro, assisted General Nezhde in the creation of the infamous Armenian Legion. About 30,000 Armenians responded to the call of Dro and joined the Nazi German army. At the end of the war, General Nezhde was arrested and sentenced to 25 years in prison. General Dro, the other Nazi collaborator, is also a hero in Armenia. The country's Ministry of Defense founded an institute and a medal in his honor. So now we have an interesting situation. Armenia glorifies its Nazi collaborators. It is the second most anti-Semitic nation in Europe, according to the Anti-Defamation League, and the closest ally of Russia and Iran in the South Caucasus region. However, the Armenian special interests such as ANCA, the Armenian National Committee of America, an offspring of pro-Nazi and pro-Holocaust Dashniks, demands U.S. taxpayer money for Armenia. And congresspersons like Adam Schiff, you know that name, Brad Sherman, Judy Chu, Frank Pallone, and U.S. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey fully support the Armenian lobby in ripping off the American taxpayer. Let me wrap up this segment of the Contreras Report and a Hispanic view of the USA with these words. Armenia shouldn't receive 10 cents of American taxpayer money today or ever. And we should demand that the money we pumped into there when they declared independence from the Soviet Union, we should demand that money be returned to the American taxpayer.